Earlier today, we talked about Ferrari and the driving technique that Charles Leclerc has implemented during the Formula One Japanese Grand Prix, which was held last weekend at the 5.807-kilometer Suzuka Circuit. It went under the radar for many observers, but not for us. The Monegasque driver nailed it thanks to the support of his working group. A collective effort that worked really well, greatly limiting the rotation deficit that instead continued to plague car number 44. In this video, we now go into more detail on the matter, adding various interesting pieces of information to better understand the measures studied by the Italian side's engineers and technicians. We know that Ferrari is working a lot on brake balance, both static and dynamic. The technical terms used are brake balance and brake migration. The first refers to the static adjustment of the brake distribution, which is generally changed several times during a lap. In order to achieve the best performance in each corner, you need to find the right compromises to maximize it. An advanced brake balance requires more effort from the front axle, which will have more weight to manage, meaning the grip percentage used during braking will be higher. This tends to produce more understeer, a condition Ferrari obviously wants to avoid. For this reason, Ferrari is currently using a rearward brake balance. As always, it is a series of compromises, which the Maranello team has been working on tirelessly in the simulator ahead of the next round of the 2025 Formula One Championship, the Bahrain Grand Prix. Moving the balance rearward means the rear tires will be more stressed, potentially overheating them, especially on a rear-limited track like the 5.412-kilometer Bahrain International Circuit in Sakhir. The brake balance offset is maintained on the front and never drops below 53 to 54% at the front. Brake migration, or brake shape as it's called, especially by seven-time Formula One world champion Lewis Hamilton, is essentially the dynamic change in brake balance depending on the pressure the driver applies to the pedal. This adjustment is electronic, not mechanical. Ferrari is specifically working on these aspects with the clear goal of gaining an advantage in improving the car's handling on track. The target is to limit the lack of rotation, offering more confidence to the Ferrari drivers. As mentioned, Charles Leclerc has already tested this technique last weekend at the Suzuka International Circuit, while his Maranello teammate is still learning the full effects of the various knobs available on his car. But the work is not done by the drivers alone, as it is a collective effort involving a team of technicians and engineers who help the drivers extract the maximum potential. It is up to the driver to figure out what works best for his driving style. Of course, the adjustments are quite complex, and getting an immediate and positive response to changes in these two parameters is anything but simple. An air intake modification could help. On one hand, considering the nature of the Bahrain scenario with high temperatures, brake ducts designed specifically for the conditions would be very effective. However, what we have learned suggests the possible modifications are also linked to the already significant rear brake effort during braking. A larger amount of heat needs to be dissipated to avoid overheating the tires and increasing degradation during long runs. The Italian team is pushing hard to get closer to the desired performance. It is worth noting that we are talking about a temporary solution, as Ferrari plans to reposition the car's balance in the coming weeks, aiming to unleash the untapped potential that team principal Vasseur has been talking about for weeks. In this regard, we should know more tomorrow. Looking ahead to the Bahrain weekend, the upcoming race will be a pivotal one for Ferrari's season. Fans will clearly not like hearing that the fourth race of the year is already decisive for the Maranello team, but many factors have led to this situation. Not everything is lost just yet, but an urgent change of direction is needed, and Vasseur's team is determined to pursue it, although currently, doubts and uncertainties outweigh certainties and hopes. Which SF-25 will we see in Bahrain? The mood at the end of the Japanese Grand Prix was not positive, as was evident from the faces of Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton. Vasseur, as always, tried to remain calm, focusing on the positive side, sometimes with debatable statements that might annoy fans already disappointed by the season's start. But at least one clear awareness was evident. Ferrari is not at McLaren's level, and the start of the season has not been satisfying. It's a simple truth, but not as obvious as it seems. The gap between the SF-25 and the MCL-39, the technical reference in the paddock, is approximately 3/4 tenths. Variables such as track, tires, temperatures, setup, and driver skills can affect this figure, as well as that of Red Bull and Mercedes. The constant is that Leclerc and Hamilton do not have the tools to fight for a win, unless mistakes are made by Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, or in specific situations. Moreover, at the start of this season, the Scuderia lost valuable points in Australia due to a wrong strategy during the critical moments of changing conditions, and in China, with the double disqualification that weighs heavily on their deficit in the Constructors' Championship, not to mention the Drivers' Championship. Despite all this, there remains cautious optimism in Maranello, with confidence that the team can still turn the tide of this championship. Among the positive statements is one by Frédéric Vasseur after the Suzuka race, where he said that Ferrari needs to solve the balancing issues to extract the maximum potential from the SF-25, reaffirming the concept he expressed during the weekend that the gap is smaller than what is currently attributed to Ferrari. The main issue remains the structural problems at the rear, which prevent the car from running at the optimal height. As revealed, the SF-25 is running with an extra height of 3 mm, which costs about 20 points in downforce, contributing to a large portion of the current performance deficit compared to McLaren, and this particularly affects the balancing issues mentioned by the team principal. The persistent understeer suffered by Ferrari is largely attributed to a weak rear end, which impacts a very strong front end that, however, cannot work in optimal conditions, causing this imbalance between the axles. In this sense, the updates coming to the Bahrain track could help, although they were planned well in advance, and not as a response to the problems revealed during testing and later confirmed in the start of the season. Frédéric Vasseur mentioned that the fourth race of the season, which takes place in Bahrain, would provide the opportunity to assess the progress they had made in managing the SF-25 compared to the tests from a month and a half ago. He acknowledged that they still lacked the performance necessary to compete with McLaren and stated that progress needed to be made, particularly in optimizing the car's balance. The Frenchman emphasized that this would be the primary focus in Sakhir, with support from those working at the factory in Maranello. He also pointed out the importance of paying attention to every detail of the weekend, noting that even a tenth of a second gained could mean being ahead of some of their rivals, both in qualifying on Saturday and in the race on Sunday. The rear of the car today works with less downforce than what was seen in the wind tunnel, but it could receive a boost from the new floor, among other things. The fundamental macro component for these cars has been completely redesigned, and several modifications are expected along the entire vehicle, with particular attention to the diffuser area, which will be a critical part to monitor. There will also be other updates to the rear wing and brake ducts. The goal will be to optimize and improve the SF-25's rear end, increasing downforce and performance in that area, which will have direct benefits in traction, tire management, as well as in balance and overall performance. In Suzuka, Charles Leclerc was also left dissatisfied with the result, but confident about the work done,